This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more info and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's January 12th, and on this day in 1969, the New York Jets made Joe Namath look like a football Nostradamus, becoming the first AFL team to win the Super Bowl. Now, no pro athlete goes into any game, especially a championship game, thinking that they're going to lose. But there really had not been such a bold prediction before. First, the AFL was considered by most to be second-rate. The signing of Broadway Joe for $400,000 back in 1965 sent shockwaves through professional football, and the fact that the AFL Jets were able to attract Namath to sign with them instead of the Cardinals, who'd drafted him to play in the NFL, really kind of started the process of legitimizing the AFL, and it was also one of the things that led to the merger of the two leagues. But when the Jets beat the Oakland Raiders in the AFL championship game, that was supposed to be it for them. The 10 days that had separated the AFL championship game and the Super Bowl had been spent talking about how great the Baltimore Colts were, and they were, no doubt about it, and how badly the Jets were going to get beat. Well, the first two Super Bowls had been 25 and 19-point blowouts for the Packers over the AFL's best, and it was just assumed that this was going to be another in that line. Baltimore had lost only one game and had shut out three teams that year. The Colts were 18-point favorites in this one, and so that's why it was a bit of a surprise when Namath came out with this.
I think we got a heck of a shot of winning. We beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
The game could have actually gone a completely different way if the Colts had not missed an early field goal. And then, after recovering a fumble at the Jets' 12-yard line, an Earl Morrall pass was intercepted in the end zone. So instead of 10, the Colts had nothing. And from that point, the game really turned in favor of Namath and the Jets.
Here we go for the New York Jets on the Colt 4-yard line. Brazy is coming out, Shinnick is coming out, Hilton is going in, and Michaels is going in. The Baltimore goal line defense. And he may go! He's in there! Snell scores!
That 4-yard touchdown run by Matt Snell was the only one the Jets scored, but it gave them the lead, and after Jim Turner kicked 3 field goals, they had a 16-0 lead. The Colts scored a touchdown late to make it 16-7, and that was the final. It was a tough loss for Baltimore. Players were bitter. Bubba Smith argued that the game was fixed without providing any evidence. Bobby Boyd had nightmares for decades and said that the game would haunt him until he died. It was a great win for the Jets, though. Unfortunately for them, they've never been back to the Super Bowl since. On this day in 2013, it was the Mile High Miracle. This was a divisional playoff game between the Ravens and the Broncos. Denver was the top seed in the AFC playoffs after a 13-3 regular season. This was a great game. It had everything. It was cold, 13 degrees at kickoff, making it the coldest playoff game in Denver. There were special teams touchdowns, a pick six, and of course, an unreal play to force overtime. The game was tied at 28 after the third quarter. The Broncos put together an 88-yard drive that culminated with this. Here's Greg Gumbel calling the game for CBS that day.
And throwing to the side. That's complete to Thomas. Thomas to the 5, to the end zone. Touchdown.
That score put Denver up 7 with a little over 7 minutes left in regulation. A couple of possessions between the two teams after that, the Broncos had a chance to salt away the clock after the 2-minute warning. They had possession, and the Ravens were out of timeouts, but they could not convert a 3rd and 7, and Baltimore got the ball back. With 43 seconds left, Flacco pulled out a miracle.
Flacco stepping up and throwing deep down the far sideline. Caught into the end zone. Touchdown, Jacoby Jones. How does that happen in the Denver secondary?
It was a 70-yard connection that tied the game, but Denver had some time. They had 2 timeouts, and they had Peyton Manning. But the Broncos took a knee, and they played for overtime. Scoreless through the first 14 and a half minutes of overtime number 1, Peyton made a mistake.
Manning on 2nd and 6. On the move, throwing across his body, and that is intercepted.
That was Corey Graham's second pick of a Manning pass that day. It went to OT number 2, and after a couple of plays, Justin Tucker came on to boot the 47-yard game winner. It is the NFL's 4th longest game on record, and the Ravens made the most of their extra work. They beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship game and then went on to beat the 49ers in Super Bowl 47. On this day in 1992, 2 teams combined to score 399 points in the highest-scoring basketball game in college basketball history. This was Division II's Troy State, hosting NAIA school DeVry University. Troy State's coach Don Maestri styled his offense after Paul Westhead's run-and-gun approach at Loyola Marymount. The Trojans' philosophy on the offensive end was shoot and shoot quickly. On defense, his players relentlessly went for steals. If they couldn't create a steal, they would allow their opponent to score, as long as they scored quickly. Every game was a track meet that was meant to wear the other team down. And on this night, DeVry was not only overmatched, but they were additionally handicapped by only having 7 healthy players. The Trojans were the highest-scoring team in Division II, averaging 121 points a game. But this game did not exactly start out like any records were going to be set. It took Troy 54 seconds to score their first points, but they soon made up for lost time, scoring their 100th point with a little more than 3 minutes left in the first half. Now think about that. In a span of about 16 minutes, they scored 100 points. That works out to 6.25 points per minute. At the break, Troy led 123-53. More than half of Troy's points came off their 21 three-pointers, and the 123 points broke the record for points and a half. But that record would not last very long. By the 10-minute mark in the second half, a three-pointer broke the record for most points scored by one team in a game at 189. Troy crossed the 200-point mark with a little less than 8 minutes left. The only problem with that was the scoreboard was not equipped to handle 200 points, so the scoreboard operator rolled it back to 0. By the time the final horn sounded, Troy had scored 258 points to DeVry's 141. Troy's 135 second-half points broke the record that they'd set in the first half. They sank 33s in the second half alone, which was more than the previous full-game record of 25. 10 of 11 Trojans scored in double figures, and you're probably thinking that the one guy who didn't score double digits was some scrub who came off the bench late. But no, the guy who scored the first points never scored again, and in fact, he never took another shot. And how about free throws? Surely there had to be a lot of these, right? Nope, there were only 3 free throw attempts in the game. Troy made all 3 of them, which really goes to show that there was really not much defense played in this one once the team came across midcourt. Troy had 28 steals and forced 44 turnovers, and if you can stand one more surprising fact from this game, the leading scorer was actually DeVry's Dartez Daniel, who scored 42 to lead all others in the highest-scoring collegiate basketball game played on this day back in 1992. And time for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. If you remember the 1960s television show I Dream of Jeannie, then you know that she was occasionally shown in her bottle. It was an actual room with a door, though, not an open set piece. So one day after shooting a scene of Barbara Eden's character in the bottle, the crew broke for lunch, but they forgot to let Barbara out of the closed set piece. She was stuck there for more than an hour, but her cries for help were later used in the show. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.